All right, so we're going to do a couple of different practices here. So the introduction of what I'm about to show you is to blend CQB movement and on the range, using the range to execute portions of interior combat that would be very applicable to military law enforcement folks that are interested in spicing up their shooting. These drills will just give you something to challenge yourself and also integrate a little bit of movement with firearms training practice. So a couple of targets that we have set up here. The white represent no shoot and the tan cardboard targets represent the shoot targets. The first drill that we're going to do is an off-shoulder shoot. So I get a lot of questions about when and where to execute an off-shoulder execution of a specific drill. Why to switch the firearm, the long gun, from the master side to the support side. And this drill is a way that you can put it together on a range that has the ability within the safety arcs to integrate a little bit of movement. But this drill specifically, the off shoulder, I'm going to give you guys a couple of options on how to swim out of the sling, how to use the sling to your advantage, and where it would be applicable. So for the off shoulder shoot, a time and an opportunity might be moving down a hallway, and then you can see at the end of the hallway it opens up into a larger area, like maybe a large gymnasium or auditorium type of space, where the time and opportunity allows you to get into the off shoulder to open up your arcs and to be more effective in terms of seeing what is in that space where you're about to go, but without overexposing ourselves before we actually have to. So that would be one application. Another application might be inside of a CQB environment where there's either a barricade or some sort of visual barrier in terms of how we would move from point A to point B. There's something in our way. Again, this would be an opportunity for us to switch the firearm into the opposite shoulder, be able to gain as much ground as we can into that area where we cannot see before overexposing our entire body. Okay, so for this drill, we're going to go through the intricacies of an off-shoulder shoot, so getting the firearm from the master hand side to the support hand side. For our shooting pleasure today, we've got some steel set up, and the safe distance shooting the carbine is no closer than 15 meters, so keeping that buffer for ricochet angle safety, no closer than 15 meters for the long gun. So what you're going to see is there's a few different variations. Some guys are more prone to swim out of the sling. Some guys prefer not to do that. I'm one of the guys that the way I set up my sling is with enough sling tension or slack that when the gun is resting straight up and down into your midline, the trigger guard is somewhere around the belt buckle. So this is enough sling and tension in the actual sling. So when we switch the shoulder for a complete full switch where the support hand is then going to take over the controls of the pistol grip and the safety selector, for an example, this is the position that I want without having to do anything with the sling. The way that we get there is with enough sling tension and slack, and depending on how you have it set up, whether it's set up just behind the pistol grip or set up onto the buttstock, is going to change the way that the angle at which the sling retention, slack tension will be affected. All right, so an option is to, if we're going to switch the hands, for example, is to safe the gun first, lift the firearm so the buttstock is over the sling, and then we find the shoulder position on the opposite side. So a half switch where we could still manipulate the trigger and the safety selector with our master hand still on the pistol grip is an option. So a half switch, find the sights with your non-dominant eye, and we could be effective here. Me personally, I feel like I have more control when I do a complete switch, not only from the position to shoot, but also so we could fight with it. And if the sling is too tight, that's going to be laborsome, and the sling is actually going to hinder the movement pattern. All right, so a full switch. Now the firearm is in a position to manipulate the safety selector with my support hand. And then when it comes time to switch, we would safe the gun, place it back into our master hand side, keeping the sling out of the way, and then now we're ready to go. Option two is where some guys like to swim their support hand completely out of the sling, which is an option. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. It works for a lot of guys. So if we're in this position, some guys will swim their elbow up and around, then they'll switch the firearm, and then now they have a lot more sling tension and slack to work with. So it is a preferred method for folks that like to go into a full switch position, manipulating the firearm with their support hand rather than their master hand. All right, so option B, for example, coming down a hallway, maybe this hallway leads into a big open area. We want to gain a little bit more of an angle around that ballistic coverage of a brick wall, for example. Swimming the elbow out, switching the firearm, and then now we have the ability to take off more of that angle without exposing too much of our body. And when it comes time to switch the firearm, we would switch, and then the reverse order in terms of getting the gun back into our master hand side. Two different options. So the one I'm going to show you is the one that I prefer. The way we have this set up is a couple of targets here with some black garbage bags just to represent a wall or a hallway, for example. As we're moving down this hallway, then there's a target that's going to be exposed in the corner, and then that's the one that we'll make engagements on. All right. Some considerations, obviously, with the way that you set your sling up, what type of sling that you're using, and how you have it affixed to the gun itself. Here's my take on how to set up the sling. It's just my take, where if you notice the sling in this the way that it's set up for me is to the gun, not to the buttstock. Not saying that it's wrong, just to think about the option of the buttstock moving inadvertently while you're, moving around through tight spaces, in and around cars, etc. There is a factor that needs to be considered. If the sling is connected to the buttstock can move, where the gun itself is connected and it's going to be at the same point. So whether or not you're running a 2-point sling or a 1-point sling, when we're off shoulder shooting, a 1-point sling is going to be a little bit more favorable because there's less sling material for us to manipulate. That being said, whatever sling configuration you choose to run, whether it's a 2-point sling or a single point, totally up to you. The orientation of clearing the buttstock in and around that sling. So you can imagine if this is a 1-point sling connected to the carrier, getting it around that piece that is connected to you is going to be the crux. Where sometimes when guys are trying to switch their shoulder, the sling is going to foul them up. So however you have it set up, just consider that A, if it's connected to the buttstock, that is one piece that potentially could move inadvertently when you didn't expect it. B, if it's a 1-point sling, you do have the option, a little bit more favorable, to switch from shoulders. The idea though is how much sling is in that, or how much tension or slack is in that sling in order for us to manipulate the buttstock around the sling. That's the idea behind this particular drill. And using a drill like this on the range, getting comfortable with the gear, trying different things that work well for you. Try for 5-10 minutes and then throw the towel in on it. You might be a little bit too soon. A lot of things like this take time, getting comfortable with the kit configuration, and sometimes, depending on what it is that we're trying to achieve, you may have to switch a few things around. Take 2. Put that in a blooper reel.